part 2 of my interview with Masse, she describes how the call to service in higher education has been a vector of exploitation, especially for women, but also men in feminized employment sectors, such as the humanities.
Wal-mart laborers understand when they're asked to stock the shelves after they clock off that they're being had badly. Academics don't. We take great pride in our gentility, in our disembodiment. We, after all, are who we are because of our minds, not because of crass physical reasons. We want to be, if not old money, old minds, where you don't have to ask what anything cost, or finally what it's costing you. And so we don't recognize our work as work. We want to say it's vocation, it's a calling, it's a spontaneous overflow. And so, again, we can see how this happens because it's why we are academics. We want to teach. We want to work with people. We want to do things. On the other hand, though, what has most come home for me is I'm training my students to work for free and to lead inhumane lives in the way Dickens would not approve of in 19th century London. Expectations that, again, you're not a laborer. You're doing this for love because you care. And hence, what kind of crass person would ask for a check to say, I really care for you, how much you want to pay me for that? There are names for those workers. We potentially could become those workers. Or we could be accused, if we're so crass as to demand money. I'd look to other historically secretaries, nurses, workforces that are not only women alone, but where the demand for working conditions, for hours, the thing, nurses going out on strike, it was an abomination to say they're not really nurses if they don't care enough. Teachers who let students go untaught, they don't really care. Rather, you do not demand this of your accountant. Say, how dare you go on strike? Or of the Teamsters. You assume that it's labor. So first it's the non-recognition, the confusion of labor with caring, to say those two are separate realms, private and public. So in that way, using it that, but also the feminization then means that, I'm trying to think of how best to put this, that once a workforce is fully feminized, it's not only are the workers themselves split. So sometimes, for example, it's hard for men to say, yes, I am in a feminized workplace, because the tendency is to say, I am not that person. I'm not that docile creature you're talking about. I have autonomy. I have power. But also, it not only splits the workforce, it splits the students who come to think that there's my literature class or my philosophy class in which I'm going to talk about these warm, fuzzy issues, because that's what English people do. There's no discipline, there's no logic. We emote, which of course is not true. And then there's the hard reality of the real world. I will get past that, what used to be called the dame school, kindergarten in the 18th, 19th century, where you work with women and eventually you work with men. Here too you go from female to male, from feminine to masculine, so that a feminized workforce is seen as a support for the real work and the real workers that will emerge from it. Something to be shed when once one is fully adult and has one's own MBA. I would love to see us looking more seriously at unionization. The very simple question of how long are you working? I often laugh and say, can you think about working to contract? Think about what this means. All these studies that again and again show 45 to 60 hours, an average professorial work week. Now, if you just say that, and you say, how do you explain to another service person? If you just say to someone, I work for 60 hours a week, and someone says, where's the overtime? And saying, there is no overtime. There is nothing except the great glory of the title and one's own satisfaction, hard-wrung satisfaction, and sometimes fatigue, anxiety, alienation. I would like to see us start working to contract. To say every time, to be able to say in the workplace, every time someone says, we need you so desperately, on the university committee to reconsider the color palette, we have a current committee like that right now, and to be able to say, really, and that will take 3 hours a week, what shall I not do so I can say yes to you? Versus saying, oh, well, that will make 63 hours now this week. I would like us to have contracts that assume we are workers, but we are full-time workers. We are not workers stocking the shelves after the clock has stopped. It's a docile workforce, finally. And so we're feeding the machines. You know, it's not quite Metropolis. It's not quite so grim as a bunch of Morlocks running up and down a hill and groaning the while. But, you know, it is perhaps Charlie Chaplin in modern times. So in training students to service, we're training them to be the next feminized workforce. They will not question the terms of their employment. They'll not question the rules they're given, the workload demanded of them, but who are just expected to be abjectly grateful for the privilege of work. The ideology we've so long embraced is ourselves as autonomous, independent, entrepreneurial even, has, as the last word suggests, quickly become absorbed into the corporate model of universities.